Oh, there you are. Hi, Travis. How are you?
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay,
Welcome. How are you doing?
good. How are you?
Good. Thank you. Let's go ahead and begin, shall we? And people can pop in as they come. All right. So just once again, if you're not one of the participating artists, if you could just go ahead and close your video and go ahead and mute your sound, that would be great. And obviously, if you are an artist who's participating, then please keep your video on, okay? So we'd love to see you as well, because this medium is very tricky. It's hard to connect. And, as a teacher who is working on Zoom, students would often just close their video down, and I wouldn't even know if they were there. So.
Oh.
I know how that feels.
Sorry?
I know how that feels.
Know how that feels, yes.
Blackness, darkness. And then you ask a question and it's like, oh, they're there.
Right. All right, go ahead, Anthony, if you don't mind, if you could just go ahead and introduce the Y Art Center and just, how unique it is for us to have this space. It's a beautiful space, renovated, historic, building that was really just given to the YMCA to do with what we will in terms of the arts. So go ahead and begin.
We just moved into this particular space a little over a year ago. Actually, and the building was host to a few artomatics over the years as well. So it did have a sort of a history of artists coming through the space, but it was totally renovated. The YMCA partnered with the Osherman Foundation and did a major renovation, totally renovated the space and opened it up specifically for the arts. So we have a lot of programs here from dance, music, theater, and obviously the visual arts. And Rula, as the curatorial director, has lifted Gallery 115. This is the second exhibition. So this is we're really happy that about this exhibition, the quality of it as well. And we're very appreciative of you as the exhibiting artist being here as well. So the reception's been great. If you haven't had a chance to come by the space, I know some of you are in different localities, but if you can make it down before the end of the exhibition, I think getting the context of what we're doing here in downtown Frederick, it's a very art-centered town. There's lots of other different art organizations as well. So there really is a vibrancy that's occurring downtown here. And we're very lucky to be part of this with Gallery 115 and the Y Art Center. But again, thank you for the extremely high quality of work that was submitted and also being exhibited. These are a group of very serious artists. So the people that have been coming through the gallery over the last month have been very appreciative of the work, and so it's a new gallery in downtown Frederick, but it's been well received, and I think having you as artists launch this off has been a great thing. So thank you.
Thank you.
So everybody probably knows me, at least you artists should probably know me. I have sent you many emails. So my name is Rula Jones. I am the curator of contemporary art at Gallery 115, which is a subsidiary of the Y Art Center, which is also a subsidiary of the greater YMCA in downtown Frederick, Maryland. And just to talk to you a little bit, again, this is our second exhibition. So just to try to explain to you the theme and why I came up with this particular theme for our second show, I would keep in mind that this was actually conceived in March. So, and at that time it was spring, right? So, that's how we got the title of Bloom, really in verb form. But also at the same time, our organization, as we said, this is only our second exhibition. Our organization, although it opened, probably like 2 years ago, was really able to bloom, properly with, COVID numbers going down. And, lastly, really because COVID was going down at that time. People were starting to come together again. People were starting to reimagine their lives. It was, you know, this new normal. You know, obviously, you know, COVID numbers are going up again, unfortunately. So, you know, but I still, you know, stand behind the exhibition in that I do think that we need to sort of come together and find new ways to, you know, stay connected and, you know, and to exist as a society. So that's really where, you know, the exhibition concept came from. But really it was open to interpretation for artists. I let that, you know, just happen organically, and all of you were chosen. We had quite a lot of actually submissions, but all of you were chosen because, not just because your work, you know, fairly did, you know, fall into the theme, but also because as a group, you collectively had a conversation with each other. May it be that you had similarities or that there were some interesting contrasts as well. Hold on one second, sorry, that's my. Sorry, that's my dog Paddington, and he's quirky and he needs a lot of attention. Anyway, so I'd love to just introduce all of the artists that are in the exhibition, even though some of them are not here today to participate with us. So I'm just gonna move that over. So if you could just raise your hand. I think everybody does have the correct name with your video. But so Karen Birch, Roberto Bocci.
Hi.
Craig Cavan, who's not Craig Cavan, I don't believe you are here today. Travis Childers, is that how you pronounce your last name?
Yes, it is.
Great. Nicole Cohen.
Hi, everyone.
Hello. Gay Cox.
Hi there.
Hi, welcome. Stephen Dill, who I believe was not.
If your kid's got that, that's not my fault.
Jenny.
But that's not here for me.
Hi.
I'll lead to it. And
Wayna,
my sister.
I don't know what that was. Wayna Lee, she's not here today. She's actually traveling. Cheryl Massaro. Hello.
Hi.
Jessie McDowell.
Hello,
Hi, is it Jessie?
it's Jessie, yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, Tim McLaurin. Not here. Patricia O'Brien.
There.
Great. Lisa Scherer.
Hey.
David Strange.
Hello.
Hey, so nice to meet you. And Catherine Verdict. Not here today. Okay, and Kathy Wilkin.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Kathy.
So thank you all so much. We really, really appreciate having your work in Frederick, Maryland. We are actually a tourist attraction, our little city. I'm actually a little bit new to the city as well, moving from, you know, the suburbs of DC. And we have a huge influx of people coming from Baltimore as well as Washington, DC area that come to our city specifically to do shopping, like boutique shopping, to go to the art galleries. I don't know how many there are right now, probably like, Cheryl, you might know that, more like 10 galleries within walking distance from each other's. And then we have also actually a theater district as well. And everything is in walking distance, plus the restaurants, I forgot to mention, which are very good. So, you know, people love to come to see us as like this, oh, let's go for a getaway. So we've had a lot of visitors from outside of the area who come to Frederick to see your wonderful work. So it's gotten a lot of attention and all positive reviews. So you should be very proud and happy. Okay, so moving on. This is just, again, just a casual conversation about the process of art making, which is really actually quite serious, I would say, in this day and age, right? Because of everything that's, you know, going on today, which is, enormous amounts of events. And so, but one of the first things I'd like to talk about in particular is because coincidentally, I had two artists submit work that was inspired by a 17th century Dutch painter. Jan van Huysum, is that how you would pronounce his name?
Yes.
Okay,
I'm
great.
glad you know.
So it's Nicole Cohen and Jesse McDowell, and I'm going to go ahead and go to those slides. And I would like to start with Nicole first, and I'm going to go to that slide. So your work was a video, beautiful piece, and it was to Chopin, and it was a time-lapse video. So
Yeah.
it talked to me a little bit about how your work was inspired by Jan van Huysum and how you came up with the concept of your work.
Sure, thank you. It's really great to be here with everyone today. So this piece, actually, I wanted to make it for a very long time. I worked at a museum that had this painting there, and I actually got the job working at the museum because you had to pick a piece in the collection and talk about it. And then, if you said something interesting enough and you knew enough about it, then you would get the job. And it was kind of a win-win. But what I found out, I did this research about the painting, and I became obsessed and interested with it because it was a still life, but it had taken the artist 1 year to make the painting. So they basically, Van Huysum painted when each part of the still life was in season. So it looked like an image that was just like, you think of it as almost like a photograph, just a one-shot deal, but it was a whole calendar of a year. So it stuck with me, that whole idea. And as I made video, I said, I want to see that. I want to, I don't want people to have to study it as much to experience it. I want to give them that. So I asked permission to use the painting by Van Huysum. Then I learned a lot about Van Huysum. But what I ended up doing was in this image here, there's a window. And I went every season to this window and I filmed the window. So the background shows all the different seasons of this particular window. And I put it in the video. So the video is a 3-minute video, but it's a whole year of seasons in 3 minutes. So it plays on this loop. So I wanted to give life to it. And so that's how I got interested. But Van Huysum, I mean, the realism of it, I added bugs, into it, and the molding of the vegetables, and, over time, the decay of life, showing the cycle of life. And I think that what was also very interesting when you first look at the painting, it looks just so clean, and just they used such fine, shiny materials, and everything looks so beautiful. And then you go up closely and you see all the little bugs and how disgusting a lot of it is, and that element of surprise also was appealing. Yeah. So it's a culmination between the real life and the painting, two things, and then the animation on top.
Yeah, and then Chopin as well.
The Chopin, yeah. And I got permission for all of that. So I had to write to get the permission for the people, who wrote it, and I had to explain my whole project to them, and they said, "Oh, that sounds interesting enough. We'll let you use it." But so I had to ask all these permissions and everything. So it took a long time, a lot more than 3 minutes.
Right. So the original painting was painted kind of, I think what was interesting when you were submitted your work, you were talking about how it was like an old Photoshop where he would just he painted over time. So like the fruit would decay, right? Or the vegetables, and like everything would decay, and he would paint in certain areas that showed, different.
Exactly. Everything that was in bloom at that moment.
Right.
And was ripe, and and so he was putting things together, like literally like the old Photoshop would be today.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I had seen another piece by an artist, John Baldessari, LA artist, who had done something with still lifes where he had them, you could rearrange the still life too. And I thought that was interesting, where he put things behind the still life in Photoshop. So he actually, you know, you would take the apple and move it around, you know, with the cursor and things like that. So it all sort of, Van Huysum and Photoshop and Bloom, yeah, it all kind of came together.
So great, excellent. Thank you so much. So really beautiful work, and we'll talk more about the process in a bit. I know that traditionally these sort of Zoom talks where, you know, for artists, we will go one by one for each artist, but you know, just because of the sheer number of artists, we're going to do it by theme. So, so Jesse, you also submitted a wonderful work. You actually have two pieces in the exhibition, but one of them is entitled After Huysum. And let me just see if I can go ahead and pull that up right now. And it is actually the piece that is on all of our published materials for the exhibition, because it really is a fantastic work. And so I think what's interesting about the piece itself, I know that during the art opening, a lot of people approached you and said, you know, is this a photograph of a 3D work or is it not? And so forth. But anyway, so I would love to hear you talk about why you chose Jan van Huysum, your interest in his work, and you know how you came up with this, not only this piece, but your entire series, which is Future Set series.
Yeah, thank you. You know, I think it's interesting how I do think that we have a lot of overlap, Nicole and I. You know, a lot of what you said resonates.
Because I love your work so much.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, part of the reason why I got so interested in still life, and flower still life in particular, does have to do with, you know, its relationship, as I see it, to technology. So exactly what Nicole was talking about, like the proto-Photoshopness of it, and the fact that, you know, these still lifes were kind of seen as the apotheosis of realism, but they were very fictional, you know, because none of these plants would be in bloom at the same time. And, you know, the artists they were sort of descendants of or participants in, you know, the Enlightenment fascination with categorization and natural history. And so they would constantly do studies. And the more you look at these paintings, the more you see cut and paste, examples of cut and paste, where a certain flower from a certain angle is painted in the same way. And, you know, I found that really interesting. Like, all of my work has to do with technology and how it shapes what we're able to sort of express, and also how it limits what we are able to express. And so, you know, even the way that the form of the flower still life itself like has been devalued and came to be seen as cliched, but it's also identified with women. CGI technology is kind of like that as well. It's seen as inauthentic, not really artistic, you know. And you know, I'm interested in just like, okay, really just exploring, like a lot of these works I did, you know, as I was learning how to do 3D modeling and rendering and things like that. And, you know, I'm still sort of like uncovering, as I look more into the the flower still life genre in particular, you know, how it sort of relates and adds meaning to, you know, an approach to it using digital technologies.
So this is all built in Maya or some 3D program?
Blender, yeah.
Blender, okay.
Right, I should have said that from the outset. Rula mentioned that there is a sort of uncertainty that is created by these pieces that I really encourage, where people think that they're looking at a photograph, but there are little clues that it's not a photograph. Like, if you look closely at some things, there's like primitive digital or like 3D digital forms. And you know, I'm really interested in that sort of like relationship, again, of truth realism and hyper reality and you know, the slippage between the reality of what we can experience in the virtual space.
Love it. Yeah, great. Okay. And so, you know, really our next theme that we were going to talk about is process. And so some of the works are very, you know, traditional in a sense, very classical. I'm going to put some paint on my brush. I'm going to go ahead and, you know, paint something, and which is fine. But in contrast to, you know, mixed media process, you know, or using technology and so forth. So in terms of process, would anybody like David, you use natural materials in your work, just as Weina Lee also did. And so we can actually go back to, I have to go ahead and close that, and I can go over. David, no. Go ahead and present that. Everybody can see that. Okay. So David, you use natural materials in your work. Again, sort of Weina Lee, who is unable to be with us today, she used, I mean, she had grass growing, really. So for some of you who saw that exhibition, which was fantastic, when the title was I Breathe Like Grass. So how did it come to you to start incorporating natural materials into your work, David?
I was directly inspired by Antonio Tapias. I watched a documentary on Tapias, and he was talking about how where he was living in Spain, it was a war-torn place, and it was like rubble and rock everywhere. So I wanted to incorporate more concrete, more rocks, more war-torn materials, because my father was in the army, and I kind of related to Tapias when he just threw a bunch of cement and just kind of brushed against the canvas. So that's why I wanted to put cement, rocks, and things like that, and crystals. And plus, I wanted to get out my comfort zone, because I'm so used to using oil and acrylic and stuff like that. So I just really wanted to change it up. And the black strip here on the two pieces are inspired by Lucio Fontana, because I wanted to create a ripple effect, but I didn't want to emulate Fontana. So I was trying to think of a way to kind of break the space within the space. So I did a black script all the way down to like kind of play as like a ripple in space almost, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's so interesting to me, because I did not know that, but just your compositions are very advanced in terms of abstract language. You know, I mean, it's not easy. I think abstract art is probably, you know, very difficult subject matter, because you know, you're trying to communicate things that, you know, without anything representational. So really beautiful work, and you know, the idea of rubble and how that you know, relates to war, and you know, for bombed places and disintegrating places. That to me is very interesting as well, because not only this one, but you have this one called Cycle, and you also incorporated earth elements into that as well. And so, you know, it's like cycle, and you're using these sort of like war metaphors using, you know, actual earth material. Maybe the war itself is cyclic, or human nature, or, I mean, I hate to say that, but maybe it is, I don't know. Is that, like, how did it relate to your titles in terms of a cycle and crystal, or?
Cycle is more representational, because if you look in the background, it's a very hazy view of maybe some animals, or maybe a butterfly, or maybe some kind of insect right in the middle. And I wanted to make sure that it's a cycle, but it's a universal cycle. How like the birth of a star, and the death of a star. And then you see like maybe what possibly is on the right is a primate or something like that, that's eyeing this object that's very bold in the front as food or something. So it's almost like this ecology, you know, that how the whole life cycle plays in effect, you know, life and death. It's pretty much life and death. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I speak about that in my curatorial essay. You know, I mean, I know that the exhibition is called Bloom, but we can't talk about the bloom without talking about what's going to be happening after the bloom.
Yeah.
And then actually, Roberto, your work in particular actually likes to document that. I know that the works that you have in our particular exhibition really do just show the bloom part, but your work is about documenting the disintegration of organic matter, like fruit or so forth, and you document it and photograph it while it's in water. So maybe you could talk to us a little bit more about your photography process.
Yeah. Basically, I've been photographing things underwater since 1995.
Okay.
The work I do is all inspired and driven by this idea of representing time, different types of time, absolute time, relative time. But for many years, I shot time exposures, light paintings, basically set up a camera, open a shutter in total darkness, and then illuminate selectively. And I got sort of good at it and decided, what can I do to screw it all up and make it more difficult and create unpredictable results? Let's put it under a primary element like water and see what happens. And all sorts of reflections of the lights I was using, mag lights, flashlights, strobe lights. And so I was illuminating the subject underwater, yet there was a reflection of the light on the surface of the water. So all sorts of new things. And I've been doing this. I'm very interested in cycles of life and death, like a lot of other artists in this. Last year, I was scheduled to do a project in Cuba and Italy, and then the coronavirus came, and that screwed up the whole project. And I decided to bury myself in my basement, put things underwater again, pickups from those time exposures that I was doing many years before, and continue that discourse, which is connected to everything else. But since I couldn't do the other project, I started this. And this is a daffodil. My mother loved daffodils. She planted them I was born and raised in Italy, came to the States in '87, then in 2000. And anyway, so daffodils underwater, and I have in my basement all these pots of glass with all these flowers that gradually decay. And I say, okay, today I'm going to shoot the daffodil, then after the day after the fake strawberry, and so on and so forth. And then after, this is about a month after this daffodil has been suspended underwater, and everything looks like a fish. If you take stuff and you put it in the water, it gradually decays, and it takes on this kind of fluttering, very ethereal consistency, and it looks like a fish, some kind of a fish, but then it's a flower, so you don't really know what it is. And eventually they disintegrate and they become water. They go back to
that's interesting.
to the origins. Yeah, they get all brown and miserable, and eventually they just fall to the bottom of the jug, and then we start all over again. So it's they're vanitas, still lives, individual petals and flowers, but they're in a way still lives that kind of evolve over time and are documented.
Would you say it's a bit of like a meditation, or?
So meditation, definitely meditation, meditating on the elements, life, and cycles of life, growth, and decay.
Happy thoughts. So, Karen, I know that your work for everyone. Karen's work is it's really actually should be appreciated in person because it is just so extraordinarily intricate, and it takes so much time. I can only imagine. But I know that your work, and I'm trying to find it on slides, that you think about it in terms of a meditative process.
Yes.
That gives you, obviously great joy to do that. Have this piece, Down the Rabbit Hole. What does it say? I have my cat stuck there with a typhoon. And Complete of Everything, which I love that title. So I'm going to go ahead and present that for everyone. And if you can really see that, I mean, just look at that intricacy in terms of when you're using like paint. And I mean,
Yeah.
you can go ahead and
So yeah, so I'm using raw linen and I'm painting. I don't think much about, I don't plan the painting. It's just it happens. It's in the moment. And then I stitch, and the stitching is very time consuming. Embroidery and stitching glass seed beads on one at a time. And that's where I really think a lot about what's happening in the piece and where it's going and start building it. It is a very meditative process for me, very grounding. I've been doing this for a long time now. The flower images that are in it, this big bubbly flower, and there's like 3 or 4 others that I've been using for a long time as symbols. And originally I started using them as a symbol of hope when I was doing particularly dark work, and over time it's become pattern maker, kind of mark making, sort of almost losing its flower quality in a way, or its meaning has changed over time for me, and they're kind of actually waning out of my work right now. So
yeah, I mean, I mean, the title, The Incompleteness of Everything. I mean, it's patterns that want to emerge but never quite do. So I'd love to talk more about that.
yeah, this piece in particular, it was in a solo show 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And it was, at that time it was oriented upside down and it was on the wall, and I was looking at it and I just knew it wasn't finished. I'd never shown a piece before where I then thought, oh, that's really not finished. And when I got it back home, I worked on it some more, and then I thought it was finished. And then like a third time I opened it up and worked on it. I do believe it's finished now, but it was an odd one in a way to figure it out, to puzzle out how it felt like it was complete to me.
Beautiful, yeah. And so I just want to talk a little bit about, I know that some people are really more process oriented in terms of their, art process. But other people spend a lot of time just in the concept, right? Just conceptualizing what's going to happen in terms of their work, and then they make it happen. Does anybody here feel that they are more like a conceptual? Travis, I would sort of think of you. Is that true? Or
I think that's definitely true. The reason I submitted the works that I did was because when I think of, when I hear the word bloom, I think of change or transitioning or transitioning into something that you're supposed to be or you have to be. And so that's why these particular I entered, because I've been working with newspaper collages for a long time, and how I've kind of made them has changed. So I was, when I looked through newspapers to make these, well, I was cutting vegetation squares out, but the vegetation that I was cutting out of the newspapers was always in the background. There would be something going on in the forefront, and nature and what was ever going on would kind of be in the background as an afterthought. And it's also a way, living in this area, I've been seeing how we've kind of segmented natural areas, how we've cordoned it off. We've kind of said, here's a park, here's a natural area, as if nature stops at a boundary and a border. And that's part of this bloom transition into humans being kind of following a path that we kind of have to be on. We're civilization oriented. And that's not unusual in nature. Ants form civilizations, bees form civilizations. But our path is such where we kind of have to eliminate natural areas to build our own buildings or homes. And of course, if you look at it from, I think you mentioned, actually, I didn't even think of this. Like if you look at a satellite image, you see this, okay, it's squares cordoned off. And that I kind of grapple with that as someone who loves nature and is very concerned about the environment. Yet I live in a neighborhood that was once a forest. I like cities. And it's this duality that, and to me, the whole idea again of we're going to make this square natural. There's going to be trees. And then right next to it, we'll have a shopping mall. Yeah. Ludicrous, like nature. And we see so many animals, you know, getting hit by, you know, as they cross the road. The idea like, okay, you have to stay here and you have to stay there. And I collaged it onto shapes that begin to suggest kind of man-made things, like we're trying to put an order into it. So these, well, the collage pieces, there's the one that's separate, that's the tree. So these are kind of like, it's a morphing of the surface of our planet from something natural to something else that we're creating. And the blooming that's occurring is our own idea of what should be. It's like the blooming of we love civilization. We talk about how much we like, you know, architecture and building, but there's a price to pay for that, in that we're sacrificing a lot of natural areas and natural spaces for that. And again, living where I live in Fairfax, you know, even just down the street, there was this little sliver of land between a railroad track and a road. You think in a million years, no one would ever want to build anything there ever. And they're mowing it down now to build 3 houses. And I feel like, yeah, the idea that we're cordoning off these areas is natural and man-made and everything. There's a point where there's not going to be any boundaries anymore, borders. So these particular pieces were kind of and then the other one that's a sculpture of a tree growing out of kind of a black ball. I read this book called The World Without Us, and it said that if humans instantly disappeared, how long would it take for everything that we built to kind of dissolve? Right. Our buildings, our houses, and it went into all the different things. Like some things would be gone in 100 years, some things would be gone in thousands of years. And so, but the book, the second from last chapter dealt with what if humans destroyed everything? And the last chapter was kind of ended, at least on a hopeful note, showing how nature could actually rebuild itself. That can't really ever completely eliminate, that there would still be bacteria left and there would still be something left to build back to where nature was. And that's what that piece is about. It's called It Always Grows Back. That a reminder, I guess, trying to be on the hopeful side slightly, that there's always going to be, there was things before we were here, and there will probably be things afterwards, that it would be really tough for humans to just eliminate all life on the planet completely.
So it's interesting that you're talking about nature in terms of boundaries, and obviously, global warming and global climate change is very important, and we are, some of us more than others are feeling the impact of that, and that really is important, I think, to think about in terms of where some people are really drastically experiencing global change right now, right? With fires, temperatures, and floods. And we in the East Coast are pretty, for those of us on the East Coast, we really haven't experienced it too much. So maybe I don't get snow in winter anymore, but I can live with that, right?
Right.
But Jenny, I know that you moved recently to the area from France, and you used nature as one of the things that what is one thing that could possibly connect you to France? Nature, right? We have nature here in America too. Okay. So, and in terms about your process as well, I'm very curious about how long do you spend on your painting? Is it more like an abstract expressionist work where it's really no, it's
actually, the act of painting is quite quick, but I spend a huge amount of hours just looking at the blank canvas or the raw canvas, just thinking about what it will be and being afraid about that a lot. So that's not a great pleasure to do that. And
okay.
I love doing doing that, but I'm not. Yeah, it's quite hard to do it. So yeah. Sorry, it's very noisy here, and my English is awful. Yeah, and especially for this one, that's what's strange for this one, because I consider this one as the beginning of something else, because I came in the US from France, as you said, 2 years ago. And right after that, it was a pandemic, so I cannot go back to France right now. So I'm enjoying visiting the country, so that's good. But I can see my painting is changing here, and that's pretty impressive for me, because I can see that there was there's another of roots. So when I saw the theme of your exhibit Bloom, it was more for me my own blooming than the blooming of nature. And I think it's both because I had to to catch something here that could speak to me, and everything was so different. Even if I knew US from but living here is very different, and I knew to be part of here, and that was quite hard at the beginning. And I think I spent many months without being able to paint because I had no subject anymore, because I didn't knew me. So that was quite hard. And this one is the beginning of a new something, and a new me. So I'm pretty attached to this one at the end, even if it's changing very fast now. And I painted this one 1 year ago, and I consider it at the beginning of something. So I don't know if I answered your question.
So the actual painting is fairly quick, but the looking and the thinking about it is more in depth. Again, the nature, that is something that has no bounds, in the sense that we can relate to wherever we are.
I don't understand you. Can you repeat this?
So no, it's good. Yes, so very good. Nature.
Sorry. Can you repeat?
So, okay, sorry, she's out and about in the city. Lisa, I know that you have a very profound connection to nature as well. And your works, it was ink, right? On what kind of paper was that? It's a very special paper.
It's Yupo.
Yupo paper. So where is that? And let me see if I can bring those up. So ink on Yuko paper is really fascinating. And it had this beautiful iridescent quality. How much time do you spend on just, creating each work? I know that you're out in nature a lot. I see that from your Facebook. And you take a lot of photographs. Are these based on photographs that you took, or?
Well, they're, I have to walk, and walking out in nature. I live really close to the watershed here in the Catoctin Mountains, and I just started walking up in there, and it's something that I did a lot as a child, and I spent a lot of time by myself out in the woods and looking for crayfish under rocks and things like that. And I just recently retired, and I have a little bit more time to, do things like that. And so pretty much every morning I go up and walk in the woods and then come back and do these paintings. And I'm primarily known as a digital artist. And so going back to painting, I hadn't painted for probably 35 or 40 years, I have to say. And so I've just been working with photography and doing collages in Photoshop primarily, and Illustrator. And so I take a lot of photographs. I'm also known as a photographer of mostly nature. And so I look at the photograph, but I kind of quickly veer away from that and just remember and the thing about I use alcohol inks right now, and also water-based inks. The paper is very slick, and so the ink actually blooms.
Right. It's
So
like why don't watercolor or something.
yeah, it moves. So if I step away for a while to get a cup of coffee or something, I come back, the whole thing is grown. So it's like I chose it because it would force me to have to deal with the fact that I can't control it.
Perfect. Yeah.
So the colors mix on the paper, and they just kind of move. And it's just this moving thing. So I walk for about 3 hours, and then I come back and I eat lunch, and then I paint for about 3 hours. And most of the time I just finish after 3 hours. And move on to something else, or I don't usually go back in and paint, but I've just recently started to do that, where I'm laying down these blooming colors, and then I'm going back in and drawing on top of that. So I'm really into layers and layers of things, and
this wonderful fantastic quality to it. I mean, I think that the photograph it looks really iridescent, but in person, it's really it just it looks luminous in a way. That is, I think watercolorists would, freak out over. It's like, oh, we got to try this ink, method, because it just has this, it's like there's light shining from the image, within the image. And I know that is something that we try to achieve in watercolor in particular. So beautiful work. Kathy, you also, your work is very collage based, right?
That's
but really interesting, it also has, the thing about your work is that, and I placed it next to Jesse's work because it looks like a digital piece, like a digital print, but it's actually just collage, like with actual materials that we can touch. And that's what really is wild to me about that particular work. And I saw your work at a gallery, another local gallery, and I was just really wowed by your piece. And I know we've talked a lot, I think in particular in our area, about this work. So I'd like to talk more about this other piece that we have here, which just is so amazing. I mean, it looks primordial. It almost looks like a primordial bloom. And as we say, everything, David Strange said, everything is born and everything dies. And that actually includes our planet. It includes galaxies, right? We know this, right? Supernovas and black holes. And so maybe you can talk to us a little bit. How did you make this piece look like a digital image when it's, I don't know, what is it composed of?
Well, it's composed, as you said, it is a collage, but it's also mixed media. I use papers and inks and paints and gloss mediums. So when I'm starting with color, and I'm not cutting shapes, I'm cutting colors. And then I start putting and juxtaposing colors together, and I'm layering. And as I go, I'm going back in with paints and inks and doing some more layering to kind of develop a new sort of realm that I like to sort of fall into. And with this one, the June night painting, as I started realizing how things were coming into being, I started feeling that humidity, that fetid kind of richness and depth of the earth. And yet I also am always aware that everything from the most microscopic image up into the cosmos has a shared quality. And
right?
Which you were alluding to.
It echoes each other, right?
Exactly. So that was my intention, to give it this atmospheric quality that kind of transcended just one spot, but with the layerings went much deeper for me. And when I first started doing these collages, I realized when I finished that the surface was pretty fragile and I needed to protect it. So I applied a coat of Liquitex acrylic gloss medium, and instantly everything became, the colors became so much more intense, and the depth was enhanced. And I thought, I kind of like this. I'm going to try it a second time. And so each of these pieces has up to about 5 layers of this glaze medium. And then after that, nothing changes. So that was the intention behind the June night painting.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I think also because it has that shine, it really does look like a photo, a high gloss photo. And so, I mean, it was pretty wild to see. And I wanted to trick people. I wanted people, Jesse, like you, I wanted people to start asking, what is this medium? You know, and go up a little bit closer. And, you know, I knew yours were digitally printed, and I think Kathy's was collage. They had this sort of relationship.
Absolutely. I was stunned by the 2 paintings together. That was really exciting for me to see those 2.
Thank you. So, and just, you know, Cheryl and Pat, just to talk about, I mean, both of you used, and I'm going to just go to your slides, really beautiful work. I know that Cheryl mentioned that she actually particularly enjoyed your work as well. And so I just want to go to that slide right now. Your process may be more traditional, if I don't know. Can you talk, maybe let's first of all talk about Cheryl. I feel like there's so much more to say, but you know, we do have a time limit here.
Well, I'll be, you know, I am so impressed by the thought it's behind what all these wonderful artists have put into their work. This was a fairly simple piece that was done plein air in oil. And I think what I like about it in relation to this exhibit is that the coming from like a vanishing point that kind of curves to the foreground, it blooms itself.
Very nice. Very
by
nice.
the time it hits you, it's at full bloom. But it's really a very simple piece, as most of my paintings are. And I like to work in oils. That's all I ever work in.
Photography, right? You also do photography.
Oh, photography, yes, I do that as well. Yeah.
Really, I think that was great. And I will just mention this because I know that we are limited in terms of time. I love the 1-point perspective. And I loved how it played with other perspectives. Particularly, I mean, and I had I sent you all like a document that people could use as they walk through the gallery to sort of educate themselves on various aspects. And certainly perspective was such an interesting physical, actual perspective. It was so interesting to me because Travis, your work looked like an airplane. I mean, I fly a lot. So, you know, it looks like landscape, you know, of when you're up in the sky and you look down with all of the squares. And I just love the contrast between your work, the bird's eye view, and then, you know, Cheryl using your 1-point perspective, which I think is really important for people to know about and to still learn about. And then actually, let me just quickly talk about, I'm gonna go ahead and escape my slides here. I know, okay, let's go talk about your here. So I will tell you that, so Gay, your work in particular was fascinating also in terms of perspective. I don't know what your process is, but it was pretty wild. It looks to me as if I was like lying on a forest floor and just looking up at the trees.
Yeah, because we don't have much time, I'll try to be brief. This is really, I have to say, a very simple painting for me. Not in its technique, but in its unified one serious view of something. What I've been working on for the last 2 years during a huge move we made and then COVID is to raise the glance that I want people to have and take it away from where they are in a hope to push us into something more hopeful, more beautiful, more momentary. And I'm a gardener and I do walk. I don't walk 3 hours a day, but I do walk. And what I did was I went around my neighborhood and I just wanted to see what was growing in spring last year, and decided that I didn't care about its particularity. I can draw a leaf as the rest of us, but the point here was I wanted to catch something that happens every spring. I've done a series on the seasons and I did a series now going into eternity, and this is just one of the flow. I want to take us through all this to splendor, somehow shed the rest and get us thinking about where are we, where could we be? Oh, hope we can, there's hope. Here, it's that moment in spring when everything just seems to go berserk. In the trees, and if you've noticed the colors, they're just intensely sort of almost primitive. And they come out and you're looking up at them and it's just a melange of these things. And I wanted a sense of light coming through. And all of that, my process itself is I have an idea what I want to do and I just start. And I was experimenting with a very old medium, which is egg tempera, for a while. And I realized you can actually paint oil over egg tempera if you do it right. So I could limit the smell because I was in a room, not my studio. And I just went at it. And for me, this is a pretty average size canvas of 48 by 48, small sometimes. And it was just, for me, the discipline to stop. Yeah. I have to stop. I not make every single painting be one. Right. This is always process. There's always another painting. So this is sort of on my group through the spring of things, when things are coming to life and there's hope. Suddenly one can feel hopeful again. Yes. And that was really my aim in this, and to do natural colors. But as I say, for simplicity for me is that this was just one theme, one tiny part of a cosmos I caught at that instant. And you're right.
Now I want to see
a lot of the work I've been doing is I want people to look up, lie on their stomach, lie on their backs, look at the ceiling or something. I don't know, but that's all right.
Because I actually took I took a student, actually I took a group of students through the exhibition, and when we passed your painting was placed directly opposite Kevin, who's not attending right now. Let me see if I can find his piece. So they were right by each other, this particular work.
Right, that's what, next to each other. Mm-hmm.
And a student said, well, that looks like, you know, if I was flying in the sky and I was looking down at a forest. So I was thinking, and you guys are the same size too, and it's right by each other. Yeah. So they had a conversation with each other, which I, you know, sorry, as a curator, I always find it interesting when there is that sort of coincidental thing that happens. So, and this actually, instead of your work, which is painted, is actually made by, you know, taking a branch and just putting paint on it and then kind of like, so that was interesting too. Yeah. So very fascinating. I mean, your work really just has this, it's like controlled, but it looks like there's this uncontrolled aspect to it. And it's just.
I'm an extremely messy painter. You can't tell it from that. My studio within 3 days looks like somebody wrecked it. I do a lot of dripping, and actually the square paintings I turn around as I'm working on them until I finally have to look at them and say, well, okay, what are you telling me? Which way up do you want to go? Oh, this is it. We'll finish it this way up. Right. And that's the process for me. And the other thing I have to do is I have to work on like 4 or 5 things at once. Otherwise, you end up with 5 paintings on one surface, which is a waste of time kind of thing.
Fantastic. Thank you. And so, Pat, I just wanted to talk a little bit about your work. It was one of our smaller works in the exhibition, but it really did stand out for itself. So I'm going to just go to your piece. Again, it's the relationship, I would say, with Cheryl's work. You know, there was this sort of, I would say, impressionistic aspect to it. And then I did actually ask, you know, students that I brought around, you know, can you find a painting that looks wet?
Beautiful.
You know, and that's more than just this particular work, but to me, it looked like, you know, how would it look if I were seeing the work like, you know, maybe through rain or when it was raining or something. But if you could tell us just a little bit about your process. It's just an elegant work.
Well, thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to show it to the Frederick and the surrounding area. Yeah, so my work comes from a perspective of mental health. This painting is called A Good Day because it's, you know, so what I try to do is portray, you know, over the course of a day, you have a range of feelings and we don't even acknowledge all of them. And then sometimes think like, oh, why am I feeling this way or why am I feeling that way? So I kind of like to delve into all the different aspects. And like, so in this particular one is a good day. So most of the flowers in there are kind of happy and bright and vibrant. But even still, there's a couple faded blooms in there, and there's some that are just kind of, you know, a little wilted off, because the reality is even a good day, there's some bad spots of it, but it's overall, this one is what, you know, you call this one, well, this is good. So this is what I tried to show. And like the idea of bloom is just okay, so that each day is a new day. And so, you know, this one is, I was an engineer in my former life, and so I am pretty process driven. And although this work, you know, it does look more traditional, it starts with, I got my phone with me like everybody else. And when I'm out and about walking, as a lot of us here do, I photograph flowers, weeds, you know, along the way. And then I run them through Photoshop, extract the flower from the photo, and then I have a little library, and I just see like this, so whichever one is speaking to me, and then I kind of see a pattern develop around that, and then that's, you know, how I build my reference image, and then I paint from that, and then I take that reference image and then I just interpret it, like as you mentioned, in a much more loose manner. And the reason that is so the idea is each flower represents a certain feeling of thought and time. But they all in your head, they all blend together. And so, and they kind of fade in and out. And so that's what I'm portraying with my work.
Okay, beautiful. Yeah, and I mean, unfortunately, this format I wanted to have is where we could talk about different themes. And, you know, we just got through our first theme, and it's been an hour. But yeah, I think we were all able to talk a little bit more about the you know, the meaning behind our works, right? In terms of cycles, you know, mental health process. You know, I just love that title, A Good Day. Like, how precious is that to us to have just a good day, right?
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
yeah, I mean, especially with you know, as COVID, we all, you know, talk about, because, you know, you kind of have to look for those, because,
right.
You know,
we appreciate so much more, I think, after this experience, like getting
Yes.
together. Okay. So many people that come up to me now, they're like, you know, I don't really know how to interact anymore, but
yeah, for sure.
And I think we're all a little bit have been, you know, become reclusive, and so but yeah, so, you know, beautiful piece, great title for that, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to talk a little bit. I know that the narrative I wanted to talk about, as well as physical perspectives we were able to touch upon, and then just the philosophy and spirituality within the works. And I think, you know, a lot of us did really, you know, address the concept of that natural cycle that occurs of birth, death, and rebirth. And as well as artifice. Jesse, I think of you in particular, and Travis as well, just thinking about how we both artificially divide nature and create these boundaries within nature. And Jesse, for you as well, like, you know, is it real or is it not real? And just talking about, yeah, I mean, narratives as well. I mean, I don't know if any particular person here, does anybody here feel that they were talking about how a narrative, you know, more a linear discussion? I know in particular one of our artists who's not here today, and his work was actually, I should probably just touch on his work just a little bit, because he is not here today. I'm just going to go ahead and take a look at this particular piece. So Cinder Biter, it was our second video piece. And I really wanted to hear a little bit more about that story. So I'm disappointed that he couldn't attend. But it was a video piece of about before the bloom. So that was interesting, like when you're still in the darkness and you're about to bloom. And he says here that he's really talking about Starcad, I believe, an 11th century Cinder Biter, so warrior. And I believe this is from Anglo-Saxon times. So, and I guess he spent some time prior to his, you know, warpath doing something preparation. And so that to me was really particularly interesting. And that's it. I think that we're going to go ahead and conclude here. Anthony, would you like to add anything?
Not in particular, but I just want to thank again everyone for being part of this exhibition. And obviously this has been recorded, so it's the documentation that will be documented for you to refer to yourselves, and we'll give you the. Do you know what the link is for that?
I will send that.
Okay, you'll send the link out. So again, thank you very much for this. It's a great exhibition. And we still have another month.
Yes, thank you all so much to the artists that were able to attend today and learning a little bit more about your work. For those of you who I haven't met before and were not able to come to the art opening, it's just so wonderful. David, Nicole, to see your faces. Who else did I not meet? Pat, were you there?
I no, I was not.
Yeah, so and then, you know, it's just fantastic to meet you guys and put a face to the work, and we will keep you updated about the next 4 weeks and how that goes. And then I will reach out to everyone about, the conclusion of the exhibition. So I hope you're wonderful about being here and participating. Thank you all so much.
Hey, Rula, I have one more thing.
Yeah.
There's this book called Abstraction
Mhm.
by Whitechapel Gallery.
All right. Yeah.
And it has a lot of quotes from different artists who are focused in that field. Some have or on the left political spectrum, some are on the right, but it's pretty much universal for anything you want to read. So I highly recommend this book.
Okay, great. I like that gallery. I've been to that gallery, and that's in London, right? So, yeah, I will pick it up. Thank you so much. And yeah, I'm always open to having recommendations of things to read. So feel free to email me anything you'd like. Okay. All right. Thank you all so much. I'm going to go ahead and shut this down.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.